Hello, my friends of Ice and Fire. Today we are back with Season 2, Episode 4 of House of the Dragon, which I have to say might be the best episode of the season so far. After the guest appearance of Septa Rhaenyra last episode in King's Landing, the Dance of Dragons is now truly underway. As usual, I'll be doing a deep dive of the latest episode, giving my thoughts, opinions, speculations, and a few comparisons to the book events that the show may or may not have deviated from. But before we get into today's video, I must let you all know that this video will not contain any spoilers for future episodes, aside from one at the very end, but I will give you all a warning before then, so please have no fear. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Episode 4 opens with Damon having another hallucination and dream in Harrenhal. Ever since taking the keep of House Strong, once home to Harrenhal, whose family and castle were destroyed by Aegon the Conqueror, Damon has been plagued by strange dreams. Harrenhal is believed to be a cursed place as a result of Harrenhal cutting down some heart trees in the past, which are said to be linked to the old gods, and even more so because of how the place was destroyed by Aegon and his dragon Balerion. But as the episode goes on, it becomes debatable as to whether Damon's visions are a result of the castle being cursed, or because of the self-proclaimed barn owl, Alys Rivers, who some theorize in the books is actually a witch. But we'll get to that in time. Damon is confronted by a young Rhaenyra. Last episode, he had a vision and saw her sewing on the head of dead Prince Jaehaerys. Here, he walks through the Red Keep and sees her seated on the Iron Throne, this time dressed like her adult self and wearing Viserys' crown. She speaks to Damon in High Valyrian, saying that he created her, and now he seeks to destroy her. Damon had a very big effect on young Rhaenyra and the woman she would end up becoming. As a child, Rhaenyra was infatuated by Damon and took him as a challenge, and he used this to manipulate her, taking her into the city in Season 1, taking her to a brothel, almost sleeping with her, and then when he was caught, he lies about what actually happened so he can marry her. This whole instance is the reason that she is forced to marry Laenor Velaryon, a man who has no interest in women, and as a result, she has to resort to having bastard children to strengthen her claim to the Iron Throne. And despite disappearing for 10 years after the fact, Damon definitely had a hand in how certain aspects of Rhaenyra's life turned out. She says that the reason Damon is out to get her is because her father, his brother Viserys, loved Rhaenyra more than him. While I don't necessarily believe that Damon is out to get Rhaenyra per se, I think it is very clear that on some level there may be a bit of resentment on Damon's side. For the longest time, Damon has always coveted his big brother's attention and approval. His relationship with his brother is one of his biggest insecurities, and he often sought his validation. Now with these visions, Damon is being forced to confront his own failings and insecurities, and so he cuts Rhaenyra's head off in rage and disbelief. She says that this is what he always wanted, her out of the way, so he could be king. But is this true, or is the thought just a projection of the castle, and perhaps it's a witch? Maybe that's what they think Damon wants, but does Damon even know what he really wants in the end? Damon is then awoken by Simon Strong, who lets him know that a raven has been sent to them. Criston Cole's army is on the move. For a brief moment, we see blood on Damon's hands, but after he looks at it, the blood has mysteriously vanished. Perhaps this is a vision of what is to come, or maybe it's symbolism of the blood that is already on Damon's hands, though we cannot see it. As Damon and Simon move through Harrenhal, there is this shot of a black goat. At first, I took this as some kind of on-the-nose symbolism of Damon being the black sheep of his family, but considering that this is a goat, not a sheep, that doesn't exactly work. Black goats tend to symbolize ill omens, misfortune, and the occult, which pretty much is the whole deal with Harrenhal and those who reside there. So Damon seems to have a lot in store for him in the future. Damon meets Oscar Tully, the grandson of Lord Grover Tully and heir to Riverrun, who informs Damon that he won't act without his grandfather's permission, who is currently incapacitated so he can't raise a standing army for Damon, which does not make him happy. He goes as far as to suggest that Oscar kill his own grandfather so he can take control of the Riverlands and get things done, which is a pretty cruel ask of a child, so it's no wonder that Oscar refuses him. Damon opts to meet with the Blackwoods himself as a result of this, since they swore to Rhaenyra and Damon needs men of action, not children like Oscar, who he calls a fish without its head. Fun fact here, Oscar in the books around this time is actually not the heir to House Tully, and his father wasn't dead. Oscar's father, Elmo Tully, was heir to Riverrun, and Oscar had an older brother named Kermit, who seems to have been written out of the show. If you guys haven't caught on yet, yes, the Tullys during this time period were all named after Muppets. From Harrenhal, we make our way to Driftmark, where Rhaenys encounters Alan of Hull, the guy who saved Corlys when he went off to war oh so long ago. She makes some weird remarks about him, about how handsome he is, and that his mother must have been beautiful, before Corlys shows up and Alan runs off. Now, this next part that I'm going to go over, I don't really see as a spoiler, since all the context, clues, and hints seem to have been presented to us pretty obviously throughout the season so far. Alan seems to have a very tense and uncomfortable relationship with Corlys and Rhaenys. Rhaenys calls him comely, another word for beautiful or handsome, and says his mother must have been beautiful as well. When Corlys arrives, she says that she knows who he is and that he shouldn't be hidden beneath the tides. His brother Adam in a previous episode also says that Corlys owes them. All of these are clues that point towards Adam and Alan of Hull being the bastard sons of Corlys Velaryon. Perhaps this adds as to why he didn't care about Rhaenyra's bastards inheriting Driftmark, because he has a couple of his own. But in a way, that kinda sucks. Adam and Alan, though bastards, are his blood-related sons, and yet he chose bastards, not even related to him, though legally recognized as otherwise, to take his ancestral seat. I wonder how they feel about that. Did they have any interactions with their other siblings, Laena and Laenor? Did Laena and Laenor even know they existed? How did they feel when they died? In King's Landing, we see Alicent holding a stone-carved dragon. This dragon was the one she repaired for Viserys in Season 1. You can still see the damage left behind after all these years. But when Mr. Orwell comes in, she drops it and it breaks all over again, perhaps symbolizing how the House of the Dragon is falling apart. Orwell gives Alicent moon tea. Moon tea, like what was given to Rhaenyra in Season 1, and the serving girl Diana, who was assaulted by Aegon in order to prevent pregnancy. Alicent and Criston Cole have been very careless in their intercourse, and as the Widow Queen, it would not be a good political look for her to get pregnant weeks after her husband's death. Alicent says that the tea is for someone else, and she can't exactly admit that it's for her. I wouldn't be surprised if she said it was for someone Aegon slept with in the past. He does have bastards wearing around King's Landing, but though I can't be entirely sure, it does seem that Maester Orwell may know the tea is for her, but he stays silent. Alicent then asks him if he believes that Viserys wanted Aegon to be king. He says that he can't be sure. Alicent is still struggling to believe in Aegon's prophecy that Rhaenyra told her about last episode, that her whole reason for basically being in this mess is actually based on the ramblings of an old man. Though the coup was honestly out of her hands and Otto was going to make Aegon king regardless of Viserys' wishes, Alicent still wants that validation. Aegon being chosen as king gave her a purpose for all the years she suffered being a wife to a man that she did not love, making enemies with her best friend, and now she has to come to terms with the fact that it was all for nothing, which she seems to accept when Larys makes his appearance later on. He clocks the moon tea that she drank, though Alicent says that her pain is because of the lamprey pie that she ate. During this conversation, she seems to be reading through the history books, maybe for evidence of the Song of Ice and Fire. Too bad the answer isn't in a book, but a blade. She tells Larys that the relevance of Viserys' last words don't really matter anymore, because the people who support Aegon and Rhaenyra will believe whatever they want to believe. On Dragonstone, the Blacks are in a bit of a predicament. With Rhaenyra missing and Damon not responding to any of the ravens into Harrenhal, they are in need of some direction as Criston Cole's army continues its march. Already, Criston's strength has tripled, and he's claimed Duskendale and gained more strength from men willing to switch sides rather than face execution. One of the men Criston kills is a man named Gunther Darklyn. He's the father of Steffan Darklyn, who is a member of Rhaenyra's Queensguard, and her chaperone when she went to the city to meet Alicent. But in the books, Gunther Darklyn wasn't Steffan's father, but his nephew. They changed that in the show, for whatever reason. When Criston cuts off his head, he calls him the Kingmaker. The reason he's called this is because of his support of Aegon II. He was the one who convinced Aegon to take the crown in the books, and because he was the one to perform his coronation. So there's a lot of weight behind this moniker. In King's Landing, Aegon is furious that Harrenhal has been taken, and he lets loose on Larys because of it. Larys was recently made his Master of Whispers, and Harrenhal is his castle by right with the death of his father and brother. But he doesn't seem too concerned because
that castle is more crippled than I am, Your Grace.
Harrenhal is in such a state of disrepair that it wouldn't exactly be a viable place to house an army. And not only that, he states that the place is penniless as he controls all of Harrenhal's funds. So the castle is basically useless despite its supposed importance to the Riverlands. Larys also says that Harrenhal will drive Damon to madness and sap him of his resolve. The statement seems to be framed around his earlier ones about how Harrenhal is broken down and poor, but ever since Damon went there, money and even the poor living conditions haven't seemed to be the problem. What really gets Damon are the mysterious dreams and visions he's having. Harrenhal is supposedly haunted, and Alys River seems to be more than she lets on. Perhaps Larys is aware of the curse of Harrenhal, or maybe even aware of Alys and her practices. Maybe it's these paranormal events that he's referring to. Which could be interesting, as Larys is theorized by some to secretly be a green seer, someone with access to magical abilities like the Children of the Forest. Perhaps it's through this magic that he remains so well informed. Perhaps he's a warg, someone capable of possessing animals and people like Bran and the other Starks in the books. Some people actually theorize that in Season 1, Larys actually warged into rats, and that's how he ends up getting a lot of his information. But we'll have to see if that's really true or not. Aegon gets upset when Aemond reveals that he and Criston Cole have been planning without him. Despite being king, the head of state, no one really seems to respect Aegon, and has no problem moving around him. Aemond talks to Aegon in High Valyrian, publicly yet privately embarrassing his older brother over his decision since his counselors don't understand the language. He says the reason he didn't bother talking to Aegon was because he was too busy with other things, like choosing a sobriquet. Yes, I had to look this word up because I've never heard this one before. It's basically a fancy word for a nickname, like Aegon the Magnanimous. He also calls Aegon's friends who were named to the Kingsguard imbeciles and basically challenges Aegon to come up with a better plan. Aegon struggles to form a response for his brother. He doesn't even know his own mother language outside of the dragon commands. It really shows how detached Aegon is when it comes to his own heritage, which is made even clearer when you find out he got rid of his father's old books. He doesn't really seem to value the past or older things like his father and brother did. Aemond basically knocks his brother down a peg, and I can't really say it's not deserved after what happened in that brothel last episode, and what Aegon has done to him for pretty much most of his life. Now, Aegon has to come to terms with the fact that even with the crown on his head, he's not as powerful as he's been made to believe. Damon has some more dreams and visions at Harrenhal. He follows around a mysterious figure who I honestly thought was going to be Viserys for a moment. We've already seen young Rhaenyra, so anything could honestly be possible. Imagine what seeing his dead brother would have done to him. But instead, we see Damon cosplaying as his nephew Aemond. This is definitely foreshadowing, but it also draws an interesting comparison. Aemond and Damon are very similar characters. For one, they have the same name, but the D in Aemond's name is at the end instead of the front like Damon. Both Aemond and Damon are second sons, powerful warriors, powerful dragon riders. They're both often overlooked, but feel they're better fits for leadership. So there is a connection between them, and in Season 1, Aemond does seem to have some kind of admiration for Damon. In fact, in the books, it's actually said by Mushroom, arguably the most unreliable source on Fire and Blood, that Damon actually slept with Alicent at one point, so perhaps you could theorize that secretly, Damon may truly be Aemond's father, which would give a whole new context to the scene we just saw, but this is highly unlikely, and even I don't believe it if we're being honest. Regardless, there is a connection between both second sons. Damon then meets Alys Rivers again, and he questions her. She says that she's some kind of maester that took up the duties after the last one fled into the night. She says he never quite settled in. Perhaps he had visions like Damon. She goes into a bit of detail about the curse of Harrenhal, how the weirwood trees were cut down by Harren the Black, heart trees imbued with the spirits from long times past. She says that Damon's bed is made out of one. Perhaps this is the cause of his weird visions. In the books, Jaime Lannister also sleeps on a heart tree stump, and he gets weird dreams because of it. Alys then essentially calls Damon out, letting him know that she knows that he had a falling out with his wife Rhaenyra. She says it must suck for him to bend the knee to his wife, a woman who supplanted him as heir, a girl child he once bounced on his knee. Finally, someone else acknowledges how weird and creepy this relationship is. Incest aside, Damon was in his teen years when Rhaenyra was born, so the fact that he changed her diapers and is now married to her is pretty off-putting to say the least. She asks Damon if he seeks to make his own claim. He has Harrenhal, a dragon, he's amassing an army. Perhaps he's out for more than a peace offering for his wife. In addition to this, maybe I'm reading into it a bit, but when she asks that question, Alys puts a hand over her belly. I think this gives what she said earlier another meaning. Maybe she thinks Damon will try to claim her for some odd reason. Will he stay faithful to Rhaenyra? He has cheated on wives before in the past. Alys gives Damon some mystery juice, which is concerning as he wakes up, seemingly with no memory of what happened after Alys. So who knows what happened that night after he met her. Now he's in a meeting with Willem Blackwood, all grown up after the events of Season 1. With the death of Samwell Blackwood, he's now the acting head of his house until his nephew Benjicott Blackwood comes of age. He agrees to help Damon amass an army if he agrees to make a move on the Brackens. Damon then questions if the Blackwoods are really loyal to the oath they made to Rhaenyra, or once again just looking for a reason to rehash a 1,000-year-old feud. In the midst of this meeting, Damon starts hallucinating that the serving woman is actually his dead second wife, Laena Velaryon, who seems to still be pregnant with their unborn child here. Remember, in the show, Laena never actually gave birth to this child, and they both died to Vhagar's fire. In King's Landing, Aegon listens to his council members talk about the logistics of war, and the success of Criston and Aemond. Hearing how his counselors praise his hand and brother while simultaneously looking over him angers Aegon, and he storms out of the room. He finds Alicent in his room looking for books. It's clear that Alicent isn't exactly in her right mind during this. Not only is she still dealing with the effects of the moon tea, and that she believed in a misunderstanding this entire time, she seems to have been drinking as well. Fun little detail I noticed is when Aegon goes for a drink the first time, the glass is actually empty. Alicent probably drank it all before she gets another drink from Aegon later. Alicent seems annoyed with Aegon when he starts complaining about how the counselors don't listen to him or respect him, despite him being the king. Alicent then says that a crown does not magically imbue him with wisdom. She says Aegon didn't earn his position like the other people on his council, that she ruled when Viserys was ill and dying. She said that once Aegon was crowned, she hoped that he would do his duty. He would be silent and learn from the people around him. She says that he should be grateful of the sacrifices that were made to put him on the Iron Throne, and that he should be humbly seeking for their assistance. But should Aegon actually be grateful? Aegon never wanted to be king. In Season 1, he couldn't get far enough away from the Iron Throne, but they kept pulling him back to it. It was only after Alicent misled him into believing that Viserys chose him, and finally experiencing the unconditional love from the common people that he never got from his family, that he came around to the idea. He never asked for this, and yet they want him to be thankful. It's honestly kind of funny how the cycle repeats itself. Otto used Alicent to become queen, despite her wants and wishes. She even confronted Otto about how he controlled her, and he basically said that the ends justified the means, and that she should be grateful, like Aegon.
Rather I've been a piece that you moved about the board.
If that is true, then I made you Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Would you have desired it otherwise?
And now, here is Aegon, pushed to be king, the head of state, but in reality he's just a glorified puppet, still neglected and overlooked by those around him. And this is why I really feel bad for Aegon. He is a terrible person and a terrible ruler, but he never had a chance if we're being honest. He had a role he was never prepared for, forced on him, and now as the head of state, supposedly the most powerful man in the realm, he's still little more than a tool for others to use, and he's just expected to be okay with that, and be grateful for being a pawn. Aegon asks Alicent what he's supposed to do then, and she says that he should do what's required of him, which is nothing. And the tone she says it with doesn't really mean just sit back and relax and let the big boys figure it out, but that there's nothing Aegon needs to do outside of being a figurehead because he has no value. I would not be surprised if this is Alicent projecting her anger onto Aegon. For a long time, Aegon being king was her purpose, the reasoning behind her actions, but if Viserys never chose him, and he was never meant to be king, what's the point of him? So yeah, I feel sorry for the guy because you can tell that he does want to be seen, respected, and acknowledged and to fit the role. Aegon strikes me as a very tragic character, and I've made a video discussing him already based on Season 1. I might make another one based on Season 2 when it's over. But from here, we see Criston Cole preparing for battle. After that encounter with Baela last episode, Criston and his army have begun moving at night to avoid the dragons, but now he wants to attack Rook's Rest during the day. Gawain thinks he's mad because surely the Blacks will send a dragon to face them, but Criston doesn't seem too concerned about that. Since the last episode, he's been getting messages from someone, so there are hints he's been making a plan for a while. Rhaenyra returns to Dragonstone after her little adventure in King's Landing. Jacaerys is mad at his mom for leaving for days, and then Rhaenyra reveals that she met with Alicent, which only makes things worse. She says that she wanted to make sure that there was no way for peace before she fully committed to the war, even though her son was killed and her husband got a child murdered. The council gets word that Rook's Rest is under attack and that they need to send a dragon. Rhaenyra says that she wants to go. Like her brother Aegon, Rhaenyra doesn't want to sit around and let others fight her battles for her. But like Aegon's council, they say Rhaenyra can't go because what if she dies? People raise their banners to her. If she dies, this would be a devastating blow to the campaign. So Jacaerys offers to go, but Rhaenyra refuses because he's her heir and too inexperienced. So she doesn't want to risk losing him. Then Rhaenys steps up saying that Meleys is their largest dragon, and she is probably the most experienced rider on the black side in general. Rhaenyra is hesitant about this, but allows it. So we prepare for war. Aegon, tired of being overlooked and disregarded, seeks to make his mark with the help of liquid courage. He dons the Conqueror's armor and meets his dragon Sunfire. Sunfire is regarded as the most beautiful dragon of his time in the books, and he and Aegon have one of the strongest bonds in the books as well, which we kinda see in this episode. This is one of those rare moments where Aegon seems truly, genuinely happy, like he was with his son, Jaehaerys. We see a similar thing with Rhaenys and Meleys. I love how they showcase the bonds between dragons and riders this episode. It makes the ending all the more painful. As this happens, Rhaenyra pulls Jace aside for a talk. She tells him about the Song of Ice and Fire, a prophecy passed from monarch to heir for generations. As Jacaerys is Rhaenyra's heir, it's only right that he knows it. The conversation mirrors the one she had with Viserys when she was younger. There's even a dragon skull in the background. But this is not the skull of Balerion, which was present when Viserys told Rhaenyra this tale. That is still in King's Landing. This is most likely the skull of Meraxes, the dragon that belonged to Queen Rhaenys, one of the sister wives of Aegon the Conqueror, who was shot down in Dorne. The Battle of Rook's Rest gets underway, and soon Meleys and Rhaenys appear to wipe out Criston's army. But as mentioned before, he planned for this. Using signal arrows, hidden soldiers blow horns throughout the woods. This signals to Prince Aemond and Vhagar that it is time to attack. But unexpectedly, Aegon drunk drives into the battlefield to confront Rhaenys. But instead of joining his older brother immediately, Aemond tells Vhagar to wait as Aegon engages. And naturally, this fight is not much of one. Rhaenys has a bigger dragon and more experience, so she makes light work of Aegon. Then, Aemond shows up seemingly to save his big brother. Something Aegon is very happy about until Aemond orders Vhagar to attack while his brother is still in range. Now, was Aemond actively gunning for Aegon here, or did he just not care that he was in the line of fire? We'll be asking this same question again later on in the episode, but either way, I can't say I blame him. Though I do feel bad for Aegon, he definitely had this coming for all the years he bullied and belittled his little brother. So Aegon and Sunfire are shot down, leaving only Aemond and Rhaenys left in the fight. Rhaenys has a clear opening to just leave the fight after Sunfire falls. She could have just called it a day with Aegon down and some of Criston's forces killed, but instead she turns back to fight. Why? Well, it's easy to dismiss it as sheer stupidity, but I believe that there are a few reasons as to why she chooses to stay and fight. On the one hand, she may have determined that escape is unlikely. Aemond has the largest dragon alive. Maybe he could chase her down and force confrontation anyway. But then again, Vhagar has been outflown before by smaller dragons like Arax, so being big can still be a disadvantage. So I don't think that that's the case. The other reason that I can think of is that the battle isn't over. Even with Aegon fallen, Vhagar and Aemond are still hale and healthy, and Rook's Rest is still helpless against them. So maybe she doesn't want to abandon these people without even trying. There's also the idea that beyond those possibilities, Rhaenys recognizes the threat Vhagar poses. Maybe Rhaenys thinks that there is a possibility that she can kill Vhagar or Aemond. Even though Vhagar is the bigger dragon, Meleys is of a decent size, and Rhaenys is a more experienced dragon rider than Aemond. So maybe there could be a chance. Even though the odds are stacked against her, what if she could pull it off? If she kills Vhagar, then she wipes the biggest piece off the green board, and the Blast could effectively win the war here. So she's willing to strap herself in and take that risk. Rhaenys definitely seems like she's prepared for death in this moment, and it seems her dragon Meleys understands this as well, since she gives her a few looks throughout this battle, as if communicating with her. It's honestly kinda heartbreaking to see the light fade from Meleys' eyes as she looks at her rider one last time, as Vhagar lands the finishing blow after their vicious dance mere moments ago comes to an end. Rhaenys plummets to the ground and Vhagar soars victorious. I wonder how Damon is gonna feel when he finds out about this. Meleys used to be the dragon of his mother Alyssa, and now she's dead. In the books, it said that after the Battle of Rook's Rest, Rhaenys' body was found near Meleys, but it was so burned and blackened that no one could be sure if it was her for certain. The Battle of Rook's Rest also went a bit differently in the books as well. In the books, it was framed as Aegon and Aemond working together to defeat Rhaenys instead of Aegon just being targeted / caught in the crossfire. But given that Fire and Blood is an in-world history book, it makes sense why they would frame it as a team effort as opposed to a blunder. After this, Criston goes looking for Aegon after he was shot down by Aemond, and he was knocked out after falling off his horse. He finds Aemond there with a wounded Sunfire curled around a burned Aegon. Aemond's sword is out when Criston calls to him, and then he puts it away. Once again, you have to question, was he just putting his sword away, or was he going to make sure his brother was dead? Aemond picks up the cat's paw dagger, the one Aegon carried, the one their father carried, the one once held by Aegon the Conqueror, which holds the Song of Ice and Fire. This could be a symbol of Aemond taking control now. Criston falls to his knees seeing Aegon's body. Once again, he failed to protect the royal family, despite being the closest one to it. I can only imagine how bad he feels since he essentially helped bring up Aegon and Aemond. How is he going to break the news to Alicent that the king has fallen? Now, I am briefly going to go into spoiler territory for future episodes, so if you guys do not want to be spoiled, then please click off the video now, and I will see you all in the next one. If you're still here, I'll assume that you already have prior knowledge, or don't care about spoilers. The big question left at the end of the episode is definitely, is Aegon dead? We saw his burned body, but has the king truly fallen? Well, you may be surprised to hear that no, Aegon is not dead. He is alive, but not uninjured. After the Battle of Rook's Rest, Aegon suffered broken ribs, a broken hip, and burned so severe, some of his armor actually fused to his skin. The injuries were so bad that Aegon was forced to sit out the war for the rest of the year, only waking to take milk of the poppy, kinda like his dad Viserys. So I wonder how the show will handle Aegon's injury. Either way, this was a really good episode, the best so far in my opinion. I really like how they showed the bonds between the dragons and their riders. It gives them more personality outside of being weapons of mass destruction. It makes you feel for them when they get hurt. I'm very excited to see what they cook up next week, but for now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell me what you thought down below, and I will see you all next time.